Well, Justin Minton of Minton Law Firm joins us today. We're going to talk about some questions you may have concerning your insurance coverage, and it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's a good, first of the year, time to kind of review that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's, there's a lot of coverages that people just don't realize they're not covered for. They say, I've got full coverage.
Right.
But that means a lot of different things, really. For instance, under an auto policy, full coverage to me means, you've got comprehensive, which is your wind and hail and water.
Right.
Collision coverage, which is, you run off the road, hit a tree or rear end somebody or get rear-ended or whatever, fixes your car. And then liability coverage covers somebody that you might hit, protects your assets from them going after your assets. So that, to me, is full coverage.
All three of those?
Yes.
You think some people think they have all three and they do not? Sometimes?
Well, usually if they have full coverage, they have those. But there are elective coverages which they think they have, but they find out they don't.
Okay. Let's talk about those. You have personal injury protection.
Right. Personal injury protection, med pay, they're kind of sort of the same.
Okay.
It's a no-fault coverage. It pays for medical bills if you're involved in a wreck, regardless of who's at fault. I mean, you can run off the road and hit a tree. Okay. And, for instance, you've got a $500 or $5,000 deductible on your health insurance. That med pay might cover your health insurance deductible. Okay. So that's a very good coverage to have, and it's super cheap. I mean, it's a few dollars a month. Okay. So this would be a good time to add it if you don't.
Yeah, especially if your health insurance, like you said, has a big deductible, then that will help. Okay, uninsured motorist property damage. What is that?
That's, for instance, if somebody hits you that doesn't have insurance. It protects you in that instance. Uninsured motorist bodily injury does the same thing. If an uninsured motorist hits you and you're injured, it'll pay for your medical bills, pain and suffering. It'll act just like that other person had insurance. Underinsured motorist does kind of the same thing, but it pays when the other person's insurance isn't enough to cover your damages. Okay. So, for instance, if you have a $50,000 car and somebody hits it and totals it, and they've only got $25,000 in insurance, it could kick in and cover that. Same with an injury on that.
Yeah, and being out there in the legal field, do you see a lot of underinsured or non-insured motorists driving?
Quite a bit,
that we need to be concerned about.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, so everybody needs that. Okay, that's a lot of stuff that's covered, but let's talk about your homeowner's policy as well. Where does that take up?
Well, there's a lot of things. You go buy homeowner's insurance and you just think something happens to my home, it's covered. But there's a lot of things that aren't. For instance, flooding. Floods are not automatically covered.
Right. Very timely, huh?
Yeah, especially with as much rain as we've been having. Right. That's something you can get. You call your agent. They'll set it up for you. Earthquake coverage is not covered. That's another one. Sewer backup, that kind of thing. It doesn't matter if you're on septic or city, it can happen. That's another good.
That's not under just a simple homeowner's policy?
Usually not. I mean, it depends on the policy.
Right.
But most policies generally don't cover that. Okay. So it's good to have that added as well.
Okay. You've also got animals and roofs.
Yeah, dangerous animals are usually either excluded altogether, and it could be, certain breeds of dogs, dogs with a history of bites, horses, it could be excluded, or they could lower your limit of liability. So, normally you have liability insurance to protect your personal assets. Right. And you may have, let's say, $300,000 in liability insurance on your home, but for dangerous animals, that might drop down to $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. And, if you have more money sitting in your bank account than that, and you've got a horse or a dangerous animal, that's something you need to look into. And
it may be someone comes on your property and is bitten or, hurt by a horse or something. Right. Okay. Interesting. And then what about roofs? What do we need to know?
Roofs can be strange. Sometimes some companies will come out and exclude them altogether if it's an old roof or if it has prior damage. A very few companies do a percentage deductible. If you've got a percentage deductible or think you might want to call and change that, because the way that could potentially work is, so you've got a $300,000 house and a 10% deductible, and a hailstorm destroys your roof. You're on the hook for your deductible is basically $30,000. Oh, wow. So your roof's essentially not even covered. Right. So, I would change that to a flat rate deductible. Most companies do that, but there are a few that do a percentage deductible, and that'd be something very good to look into.
Very good to look into. You find a lot of people just sign with their agent. They assume this stuff is covered and they never go back and check it and look at it.
Right.
What should they do if someone's concerned about their insurance coverage?
Call your agent and ask them, exactly what's covered. When you're shopping for insurance, generally people in there and they're wanting, I just want the cheapest insurance. And so when you do that, it cuts out a lot of these coverages because there's a fee for flood insurance. There's a fee for MedPay.
Right.
It's very small fees, but it's huge coverages that can be added to your policy for not a lot of money. So yeah, call your agent and see.
So that you don't have to call an attorney like Justin later and work this out in court perhaps if you thought you were covered and you were not. Thank you so much. A lot of good advice. We appreciate you. And thanks for being here. Of course, Justin Minton of the Minton Law Firm. There's the information on your screen as well for address and phone number to reach them if you think you need some more legal advice. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
All right, back in a moment. Up next, we're going to learn about a great auction coming up. We have Joe and David of Wilson Auctioneers coming up to tell us all about it after this.